This is the Brandon Smith Show. I am your host, Brandon Smith, and the entire purpose of this show is one singular thing, and that is to help you live a life that much more free from dysfunction. And so for today, we are going to talk about intentionality and leading with intention, both in our personal lives and our professional lives. And to help us on this journey, I am so fortunate to have an excellent guest with us, Amy Balog. Amy, so good to have you here.
I am thrilled.
I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled that you're thrilled, and I'm thrilled you can join us. I'm really excited about this topic, and we got to jam on it a little bit beforehand. And I love when we can bring topics that we can feel in both our personal life, professional life. We can kind of encompasses all aspects of our life, and I think intentionality is definitely one of them. So before I go too much further down the path, I need to give you a proper introduction. So Amy is the founder of ConnextionPoint Services. So that's your firm. So leadership, executive coaching, and you mentioned you do a lot of other things even beyond that.
Yes, a lot of facilitation, team development.
So tell us a little bit more about what you do and how you got doing this work before we kind of dive fully into our topic.
Okay. So this is my second career, Brandon.
As I think usually executive coaching is for most of us.
Yeah, I've been 10 years at this. So I had 20 years in a corporate career. And
fantastic.
So just really quick, back in 1990, I was selling large, complex project services to organizations, which usually threw them in great stress because they were going through a lot of change for the first time. So just a quick story. So back in the 1990s, we were running two large projects. One was with a bank and one was with an insurance company. And we were having a hard time on both projects. We just couldn't get to the real conversation with both clients. So you know what I mean. Yeah. The conversations that have to happen before the conversations. And the political landscape is very complex.
Yeah.
So both projects were struggling. Okay. And then Daniel Goleman came out with his book, Working with Emotional Intelligence.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm probably a frustrated industrial psychologist because this book came out.
You're not alone.
And this is before Kindle, before iPads and everything else. I read this book cover to cover, highlighted it and tabbed it and everything else.
Awesome.
So what was happening at the same time was the banking project wasn't going well, but the insurance project was starting to turn around. And everybody was giving credit to our program manager. Like, he's the rock star. He's the guy doing it. And he was very good. But what I started to see was the emotional intelligence quotient between our team and the customer team and the bank was very low. We weren't having emotionally intelligent conversations.
Oh, wow.
And the insurance company, both sides, I'd go to these meetings and this is really geeky, but I literally sat in the meetings and inventoried all the emotional intelligent behaviors I saw on both sides. And
or lack thereof.
Or lack thereof. And that was just this epiphany for me. It created a drumbeat in me. I just became such a passionate follower of the human dynamic and emotional intelligence. And this was deep in my other career. And I did it. I mean, I just kept, I started changing the way we would run meetings and everything. So that kind of planted in me. So long story short, years later, in 2008, when we had the economic crash.
Yeah, I remember that all too well.
I was in a consulting firm, and they were struggling. And they were like, well, you have your job, but this is kind of going to be what's going to happen, with the environment around here. I'm like, I just don't, I didn't feel it. And I was 42, and I thought, wait a minute, this is my time. This is my time to step out and, explore the edges of what I've always loved. So I made a really crazy decision. I scared my husband, and I walked away from my career and restarted entirely in this work. And be honest with you, Brandon, you can maybe relate to this. I couldn't even describe what this work was back then either, right? I didn't know.
Or probably even your place in it.
Right, exactly. You
knew you were drawn to it, but you weren't sure exactly what was that going to look like.
Exactly. And so I had I had 1 year of financial bandwidth to try to get this started. And I went to all my, past clients, and I said, okay, this is what I see. This is what it needs. And it was really great because some of the launch clients that took a chance on me back in 2008 are still my clients in these organizations to come in and bring a new leadership perspective into the middle of very complex dynamics So it's really kind of flushed out to be a good part of my business is executive development in the succession line. So these are people that are highly analyzed, they're high potentials. So everybody's got their eyeballs on them, and there's a lot of pressure. And, so it's helping them be the kind of leader they can be in that inflection point in their life.
And that's happy coaching, though. It's exciting coaching.
It's great work.
Because it's growth stuff.
It's fantastic
I love
work.
it.
And then I do some learning work in organizations. I'm very passionate about Peter Senge's fifth discipline, systems thinking and learning, and so bringing learning into the belly of a team.
Yeah.
And building a growth mindset with each other. So that's really exciting work that's been unfolding for the last few years in my practice, and I just love it.
The world really needs you right now. That's really awesome. Well, as you were talking, my eye was drifting. So directly behind you, below my big boy bobblehead, you'll see Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Goleman.
That was my Bible.
Look right there, right behind you. You were preaching and I was sitting right behind you. Awesome. Okay, so let's dive into this topic of intentionality.
Yes.
I'm all about this. So for me personally, it is so hard to do. Mm-hmm. I get so caught up in the whirlwinds of life and the fires that are being put in front of me that it's hard to always be intentional. Mm-hmm. So when you think about this, educate us a little bit about intentionality. What does it mean to you? And what are some things we could be doing to get better at it?
Okay, so when I work with leaders, I think about two things they can be intentional about: the environment they create in themselves, and then the environment they create in others.
Okay, hold on. I got to unpack this. So you're saying environment you create in yourself. Mm-hmm. So you're talking about inside your head?
Mm-hmm, your narratives.
Your narratives. Okay, your self-talk, the way that you
what you
converse
believe
with yourself.
About your leadership, your role, everything.
I talk to myself all the time as I walk around the house. So I guess this is healthy. I guess it depends upon what I say to myself, right?
Yeah, your own words to yourself can do a lot of stuff, as you know.
So what we say to ourselves, and then the world that we create around us.
The environment we're creating.
Environment.
And
that can be, I'm extrapolating, but it sounds like that could be both at work, but even outside of work.
Exactly.
The environment you create around you. Okay, awesome. I'm with you.
Okay, so systemically, our world right now, as I think many people can relate to, is very much about the doing. So companies hire you because you have this domain expertise, and they want you to come in and deploy it fast. There's a lot of pressure. We underestimate what we need to do in the environmental side of our leadership. So here's what that means. The best way to try to articulate this, because this is kind of going into the deep end of the pool a little bit, is to just tell a quick story about a woman I worked with a few years ago that was starting her job and she was upside down.
Cool. Story time. I like story time.
Okay, so this is story time. So I was brought in to help her on board, but she had had a really rough start already to her job. She had disenfranchised herself from her team. And this is...
So tell me a little bit more, when you say disenfranchise herself, what did she do?
Her team didn't trust her, wasn't bought into her, and, she didn't have them, so to speak. Okay. This is a good person. She's brilliant. She's smart. Her previous jobs were all in the consulting industry, so she was an expert at process and efficiency. But she was brought into her first real serious corporate leadership job. And so we sometimes lead where we came from. So she went in to take over customer service department. And she looked at it, and she was brilliant, right? And she said, I know exactly what needs to change here. I'm going to change the entire way this thing runs in the process. You're smiling because I know you know what's coming.
I'm with you. I see where this train's going.
Yeah, you know where the train's going. So absolutely. And what she did that got her off to this rocky start, she had poured herself into this and she studied it just like a consultant would and it almost devised her own case study in her head. She brought her team into the room and she whiteboarded the new vision of how everything will work and what. Now, this is a team that had been through kind of hard times for 10 years. They were not feeling like the company really respected what they did, how hard they had to work around all these crazy things that happened in the company. They felt like second-class citizens, sort of. They felt like the redheaded stepchild, and they were wounded. And so here she is giving them the whole new, here's the way we should be doing it. And they not only didn't take that well, they stopped trusting her, and they were just demoralized, right? So she was just a young, aggressive, smart, her intention was to help them, wasn't to hurt them, but she was leading with all these answers. And so when we started working together, she had completely missed, the environment that she had in herself, which came from her beautiful consulting career, but the environment that she needed to create for them. And she didn't make that connection. So the transition is, our leadership is not about our answers. It's about creating meaningful shared experiences. We lead. If I'm leading through meaningful shared experiences, I'm going to start leading. If I'm just leading through my answers, it's going to be hard to make that environment happen. So,
that's a really beautiful way to say that. Meaningful shared experiences. Meaningful
shared experiences is really what fuels real leadership. It's not our answers, but here's what's the tricky part, okay? So when my challenge to her is, we started really thinking, her intention was actually beautiful. She really did care about these people, and she really did want to make it a better place. And her ideas were not bad, Brandon, just that the way she was coming at it, the way she was creating the environment. So I said her first whiteboard meeting should have been, she could have, and she started doing this after we started working together. Just join them. Learn their stories. And her whiteboard presentation is really, hey guys, everything I've learned from you guys. And this is what I see. And is this what you want to keep doing, or do you want to change it? And here's what I've learned. And start paying homage to everything they've been through, and then begin to build her vision through their context. And then just go through some stuff with them. Go through a hard project with them, or put them in the meetings and let and experience it with them. And just, you know what I mean? But the reason why this is hard, because of course she had the perfect storm, because she had the narrative in her own environment of her stellar consulting career that got her hired. And by the way, the executives who hired her because of that. And they quick wanted her to put answers down, right?
Yeah.
But she was able to put answers around the process, Brandon, but she wasn't able to put answers around building the people and bringing the people. And that's where she needed to build, create an environment for them where they felt like they were all shoulder to shoulder in this thing.
Yeah, I love that. It keeps going back to this phrase for me you use around meaningful shared experiences.
It's
because
huge.
I think that's so important. I've heard it, and I think the way you framed it is more beautiful than what I've heard in the past before. I've heard people describe the difference between being right versus effective. And sometimes we have to make that choice. Do you want to be right, which can create more of a clash, or do you want to be effective?
Right.
That's pivot point, and the meaningful shared experience is about being effective.
Right.
But the hard part about it is it takes longer.
It does.
It takes more time.
Absolutely.
It takes more patience.
Yes.
And it forces you to slow down.
Exactly.
So I was doing a session last night for some female physicians, and they were talking about emotional intelligence. And I said, and they said, the question was, can you learn it? And in some ways you can, to a certain degree. Some people have a more natural predisposition to it than others.
Correct.
But part of it for those hard charging drivers is learning when to slow down and asking the right questions. Okay, so I want to continue, and I want to continue down this path of intentionality. We've hit our break, so let's roll into a break. Stay with us. Amy Balog is going to walk us through intentionality, how we can do that, both reshaping and changing how we think in our own narratives and the environments around us. And right after the break, we'll resume. So stay tuned. Hey, this is Brandon Smith. Happy holidays and Merry Christmas. It is the season of family and hopefully not family dysfunction. And it's also that time of year that if you're anything like me, you're planning for the next year. You're thinking about, how can I set next year up to be really, really awesome? Well, I want to help you with that. If you haven't downloaded one of my workbooks on workplace happiness, I'm going to offer a special gift to all my listeners that if you download one of those books, use the promotional code NEWYEAR, all one word, New Year, either uppercase or lowercase, and you can receive over 50% off any of my 3 workbooks. So whether you're looking for the right job, you could download that workbook, or the right culture, or the right boss. All of them, the promo code will work. So consider that my gift to you as you get ready for the new year, and let's make this next year, 2018, a great one. Welcome back to the Brandon Smith Show. I'm, of course, your host, Brandon Smith, and today we're talking about intentionality, and I've got a fantastic guest here, Amy Balog. Amy, I am so thrilled, again, that you can join us. Before the break, we were talking about that story.
Yes.
And I almost asked you during the break what happened, and that would have totally been horrible for everyone listening. So now I'm going to ask you, what happened? How did this end?
So the good news is she had a huge leadership epiphany, trying a different way that didn't feel so speedy and filled with answers. And the good part of the story is she brought along her team and was able to execute the changes. But the interesting part, they weren't able to execute it all the way through. She had to slow down. And it was really the most challenging thing was she had to generate a lot of leadership courage because she had to go back to her leadership above her and challenge them to look at the changes they wanted a little bit differently. So it was a mixed bag. I mean, she grew as a leader substantially and saw that when she went and really meant the environment where it was at, she really got momentum. But what the company thought from way up above what was needed wasn't exactly what was needed. And so the challenge she had to face after that was influencing upward. And it didn't go badly for her, but it was, I will admit, it was really, really hard. It wasn't easy. And you know what I mean? Because even though she shed her, I need to have all the answers, some of the people around her hadn't. And, you know, everybody wants to prescribe before they understand, you know?
So I'm going to go back to the phrase again, that meaningful shared experience.
That's exactly right.
It sounds like she had to then take that same idea and take that up.
Right.
And another way you can say that is reframing.
Right.
Part of leadership is framing what's going on here. And so she had to go up and say, hey, actually, everybody, what I'm seeing down here in the trenches is this.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this and what you want that end state to look like. And here's the reality.
And the challenge that she and I strategized on, which would have been very powerful if she could have pulled it off, and she tried, was to bring some of the leadership down into the department and not just come down to do a town hall, but literally come and spend a field trip day in the department and spending time with the team. And nobody wanted to, everybody was too busy, right?
Too busy.
But that was what she was trying to go for, a shared experience to give her the context. And you think about adult learning, it's all about experiences. Yeah. Experiential. And so I think Ford, her career has continued on the corporate path, and she's fine in it now, right? You know, she gets it, but it was a tough, it was really
That's a
growing
great story.
Yeah.
Okay, so now here we are, and we want to get better at intentionality. What are some things we can be doing or thinking about or noticing to get better at this?
Okay, so I think it's when you look at environment, you think about being a force of something. There's a difference between just coming in and just doing what you do and knowing what you do and trying to be the best at what you do versus understanding that you can be a force. And oh boy, after 10 years of doing this and thinking about it, if it nets out, if someone could really bring, leaders hold the energy of a room,
Yeah.
And what does it really come down to? And I kind of articulate it this way. It comes down to three forces that are most powerful when you're leading in complexity. Being a force of calm, which is different than just being calm, but knowing how to create calm. Being a force of clarity. We can see where we've got to go. And then being a force of conviction. So, helping leaders say, okay, what does it mean to do this for me? I'm not going to become it's not about this one competency, it's about becoming this force. So, let's see, force of calm is truly coming to the room and creating a good, clean energy, being highly present to people, and knowing not just the content of the meeting, but understand sort of the whole emotional landscape of the meeting, right?
Okay, so I'm going to go back I'm going to rewind.
Yes.
To a couple sentences ago.
Yeah.
And you said, clean energy.
Clean energy.
I think that deserves a little bit of discussion.
Yeah, I know. That's probably a whole show. I was hesitant to bring it up.
Really good. I think I'm following you.
Okay, I was hesitant.
If we were to do simple terms, what's clean energy?
Okay, that's another one of my Amyisms that I use a lot is, okay, when I'm in clean energy, which I am in right at this very second, I'm well rested. I have no baggage. I got nothing to prove.
Yeah.
I'm at peace, and I'm not needing anything from you. I just want to give, and I want to be present. And so we can have a really strong conversation. You could even challenge me, but I'm in a really good place, and I'm at peace. And so it's the thing. So this is why we have to take good care of ourselves, and we have to think how we're managing our stress, and we have to think about how we self-regulate some of our own traits, because clean energy is a highly present place. It's highly present, and it's very peaceful. So you can be peaceful and passionate, but it's just, and oh my gosh, our brain is crazy, cool, and amazing. If you see somebody in a room, you can tell whether they're in clean energy or not, actually. Yeah, you can tell. So that's really powerful for a leader to know how to get there and to be able to do. And once you're there, then you're calm. You're completely calm. And it's not like you don't care. It's not like you don't have a point of view or urgency, but you're still calm, because you're in that place.
When I'm in that place, I can almost feel both my feet very grounded on the floor. Like I feel like I have a good stance. No one's going to knock me over. I'm not going to knock anyone else over. Mm-hmm. I'm just grounded. And there's no baggage, so I'm not trying to get anybody for anything. I'm not spilling over my own thoughts or beliefs or anxieties or depressions or being tired. That's not spilling over. Mm-hmm. I'd like to say I'm there. I try to be there more often than not. There are times that I'm not.
We're not perfect.
There are times I'm not.
Listen, we're not perfect, and we have to know that we have to know our limitations around that. I had a leader once that was going through a really tough divorce personally, and he was exhausted because his home life was chaotic and it was heartbreaking. So he was coming to work and just dropping all that into all his meetings. He was living entirely in a stress behavior, so he couldn't be a force of calm, and he definitely wasn't in clean energy. So what we had to do was say, okay, where do you need to get some recovery time in your life so you can manage what's coming at you and give back to people this way? And that was profound for him.
And I also find that, I think, yes, that's exactly what you need, rest and recovery time and exercise. But I've also found people will give you a lot of grace if you attend to it.
Right. Oh, beautifully said.
If you say it in the moment and say, I'm sorry, everybody. I'm just going through a very difficult time right now, or I'm very exhausted, and I can you're probably sensing that.
Yes.
I'm trying my best to manage it, but I apologize. It's just where I'm at right now.
Right.
Most people will say, I get it.
Yeah.
All right, so our first one is force of calm. Love it. And what I also love about that is you can use that in all aspects of life. You can use it while you're leading a committee meeting and with a nonprofit, at work, at home, with your spouse or children. It's I think all three of these play in all aspects. So force of calm. The second one you had was a force of clarity.
Right. So
I'm a huge clarity person. So tell us more about that.
So simply, I think the brain rest. I also dabble around a lot of neuroscience reading. You and I could have a whole talk about that. But our brain will rest when we feel like we know what's next. A little bit, there's uncertainty is a hard thing for us humans. So
I think that's like from early days. It's like, where's the saber-toothed tiger? Like, I don't want to get eaten. Because if you know where things are, what's coming, I get that.
So leaders have to set out interim places where people can say, we're going to get to this landing point. And so right now in organizations, most organizations, there's so much disruption that their business models are no longer predictable. And they're going to have to try out strategies. So it's really hard to say, we're there yet, guys, because it's constantly changing. And that's very stressful for us. So leaders have to create a point of landing, say, okay, when we get this, we've achieved something meaningful. And this is going to be good. And this is what we're seeing. And I'm going to help them get there from their context, right? Not my answers. And so it's just giving them this clear landing spot. It doesn't have to be. Some leaders aren't happy until the most perfect thing is the final end goal, whatever it is they don't celebrate anything. It's just like, People feel change fatigue when I feel like I keep recycling this work, but I don't know what kind of impact it's having. And I don't see that we've made progress, or are we making progress? So you have to show people a landing point of progress somewhere. And one of the best leaders I ever worked with, her team is reinventing the company. And so they're just constantly having to learn things and not get a lot of attaboys for it because they're creating tension in the company. But she keeps saying, you guys, we did this, and this was actually a win. And here's how it was a win.
So framing that too, and creating that, as you said, landing point, landing place.
Yeah, and they feel like they have clarity because so the leader has to know how to create that there is progress on this path. You do have to stay in reality if there's really not progress, what we can change. But you still, I believe, if you work in a team where they don't feel like there's any forward motion at all, they just their energy's gone.
Yeah.
And they don't have any, clarity is so important there.
So we've got one last one to cover. We haven't hit force of conviction yet.
Yeah.
So tell us, what's the really nugget behind that one?
The nugget behind that one is that leaders make mistakes when they come in with answers and not thinking about shared experiences, and they try to drive change through their force of personality. And they're convicted. They've got the conviction. But the conviction that can be created is when I feel convicted when you show me that I can do something I didn't know I could do. And you're really attentive to my talent. So it's really having deep talent conversations with your people, understanding where they've had accomplishments in the past, and then constantly giving them valuable feedback about, when they step out and do something else, my gosh, that was good. And let me tell you why that was good. And so what you're doing is you're not just talking to, you got your job done. I'm talking to your talent. So if you talk to my talent and start building affirmation in me trying something new, stretching my talent, and, we're getting good, real feedback, you're building conviction in me. And if you also build an environment where, hey guys, I had you guys, I want you guys to work together this way, and you watch them do something good together, and you say, wow, you can do it. You did that. Force of conviction is not just leading the work, it's leading the talent. And it's helping people understand that they can play in different areas of their capacity. This is why it's so important to, really be highly attentive to your people, have good one-on-ones, and all those things.
It's funny, when you went down this path, I thought it was going to be more about the leader and more about her or his will, but that's really not the way you directed that. It had more to do with inspiration.
Yeah.
Which inspiration comes from the root of to breathe spirit into someone. So you're breathing spirit into them, focusing on their talent, creating more of a spirit of conviction, not just you. I love that. It's okay. So we end up with those three. So we can take those away from us. Force of calm, how we can have that force of calm in all aspects of our life. We've got force of clarity, how we can drive that and frame that. And we've got force of conviction, and focusing on people's talents and gifts and nurturing. I love that. That's fantastic. Well, we're getting close to the end. I ask all of my guests this question. What's one life hack for us to help us eliminate dysfunction in our life, either personally or professionally?
I think it's to focus on being very, very present.
Okay.
As present as you can be. Be as in clean energy of a state as possible. Because when we're present, we get more out of every moment that we live, and life is going to go by really fast. And we create more meaning.
Yeah, it goes back to clean energy. You've got to get some of that junk out of your head in order to be present. Love that. Amy, thank you. You're an absolute gift to me and to all the listeners.
So much fun.
So if someone wanted to learn more about the work you do, where can they go? How can they learn about you?
So my website is spelled a little differently. It's ConnextionPoint.com, but it's CONNEX is an X-ray, TION, point, POINT.com, which is a little different. And then, of course, you can find Amy Balog on LinkedIn. And I'm on Twitter at
Balog. Is BALOG.
Right.
So if you're watching the video right now, you'll see Amy's name appear. But if you're listening, it's BALOG.
Correct.
Okay, got it. Awesome. Fantastic. Thank you for joining us. And thank you for listening. So join us, of course, every Sunday at 9:30 p.m. where we have a new Brandon Smith Show drop on Facebook Live. Or, of course, you can download us on iTunes. Follow us on Twitter at @TheWPTherapist. And until we see each other again or you listen again, have an awesome week and an awesome life.